Hello and welcome to the I'm Not podcast. My name is Jerzy and my first guest ever is Karl Pullein. Hello, Karl.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here.
We meet for the second time in our lives, actually. I have invited you to some old podcast of mine, which was also about analog things, but later on I went to a total hiatus. But we will talk about analog things, paper, notepads, notebooks, etc. So let's begin by introducing who you are. Karl is, can I say, a productivity consultant?
Yeah, that works.
That works. A productivity YouTuber also with a channel that talks mainly about Todoist. Lately also about the Franklin Planner, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And also productivity using the Apple platform. I have found Karl for the first time when I was looking for some videos about Todoist. So this is Karl's expertise as far as my story goes. The first question I wanted to ask you is, what is your recommendation to not switching productivity apps and tools?
Well, switching productivity apps is really, well, first of all, when you're moving all your tasks or notes or whatever to a new app, you're not doing any work. You're just moving. It's like the old-fashioned terms when we used to have in trays and out trays. You were just moving paper from one side of your desk to the other side of the desk. You've not done anything. And when you're switching apps, it's really, unless an app is completely broken, it's not going to serve you any productive purpose whatsoever. Now, most people never admit it, but quite often, and I know because I've been in this place years ago, was the latest app looks prettier than the one that you're using. So let's switch, but I will find a better excuse because it looks better. Oh, I'm really struggling. It looks overwhelming. Well, it looks overwhelming because of what you've put in there. It's not the tool. It's always what you're putting in there. So unless something is actually broken, it's one of the biggest time wasting activities that you could do. I've just said pick one and stick with it, because the advantage of sticking with something, I mean, I've been with Todoist 12 years, I think now. I know every nook and cranny. I know my keyboard shortcuts are like hardwired into my fingers. I know how to fix any potential. I mean, Todoist doesn't usually have any problems, but if it ever did, I know how to fix it. Actually, with Todoist, it's easy. It's just close and reopen if there's ever a problem. Yeah. That fixes every problem. You know, that's what you learn from sticking with an app. Switching apps all the time is you're trying to find how to replicate what you were doing in the previous app, which probably isn't going to happen. So it is just a big waste of time. So it's never a good idea to be app switching all the time, unless you're very new. I mean, when you're very new and you're just starting out, you've got to try them. But eventually you've got to stick with one and then properly learn it.
But switching apps feels good.
Yes, it's the dopamine hit.
It's a good feeling, and it's a dopamine hit, and also you feel that as if you made some kind of work, really, because you're arranging your workspace in the new app, maybe, or maybe, you know, you say to yourself that it's a mess in the system I'm using right now, but in the new one, I will not make some kind of errors, and it won't be a mess, you know.
Correct. Yes.
So if I feel this urge to change my preferred to-do app, or maybe a note taker, because this is a space also that exploded in the recent years, what would be your advice so that I don't make this?
The thing with that, though, is you get a momentary sense of relief because you eliminate a lot of the stuff that was in your old app when you transfer to your new app. But after 2 or 3 weeks, it's just as overwhelming as it was before. And then people start, oh, I've seen a YouTube video about this new app, and the process starts again. So you're focused on the tools instead of focusing on the craft. You know, a carpenter who makes chairs or tables or works of art, they're not, I mean, I've seen these guys, I've seen their toolkits. They've got hammers that are 100 years old because they've been handed down from their grandparents. You know, they've got chisels that were given to them by their father that's 50, 60 years old. It's not the tools that make you productive. It's you that makes you productive. And it's that clarity and that's that knowledge of knowing what's important to you and to the work that you're doing. That's what makes you productive. It's not the tools. The tools often are a distraction, particularly if you're changing them all the time.
So you're in the camp that says that the tool doesn't matter?
Yeah. I mean, I'm doing an experiment at the moment. I did one last year with the Franklin Planner, but this year I'm doing it with Apple's productivity tools. I'm using Apple Reminders and Apple Notes, which are not what I normally use, for 3 months. And, my system hasn't changed at all. I'm still doing the same work every day. Reminders tells me, what needs to happen today. And yeah, it does it very well. But I do these experiments because it helps me to learn about these tools. And a lot of my clients are using these tools. So it's good to know what's happening with the tools that they use. And it's a bit of fun as well.
But it's an experiment, so...
Oh, yes, I already know I'll be going back to Todoist and Evernote in January. And to be honest, I can't wait to get back to Todoist.
So maybe please tell us what is your preferred tech stack?
My preferred tech stack is, Todoist is my task manager. Evernote is my notes app. Now, to be honest about Evernote, I've been using Evernote for 16 years now. Again, I know it inside out. And obviously back in 2009 when I started using it, Apple Notes was not great. Today, if I was faced with the same choice, Apple Notes or Evernote, I would actually choose Apple Notes. There's not much between them, to be fair. And for calendar, I use Apple's calendar because I've been using that since I got my first Mac with OS 10 as it was then. So I think that was 2001. And there wasn't much choice back then. You had to use what was built in on the computer. And I've never found fault with it. So there's no need for me to change. I do find Google Calendar incredibly annoying. One little tap on your keyboard, on your mouse, for example, and suddenly you've created an event. I'm going, I don't want to create an event. Oh, it just gets so frustrating.
I love it. But I am migrating away from Google because I got other problems. I have migrated actually towards something that is very niche, that is called Hey by Signals, the makers of Basecamp. But this is something I liked in Google Calendar, that you just click and you can create an event.
Well, yeah, and I can double click in Apple Mail and create an event, but I have to double click, so it's no accidental clicks. I use a trackpad. Okay. I don't use a mouse anyway. And so just one errant finger on the trackpad and suddenly there's an event. I don't want to do that. And also duplicating, option on my keyboard is like option and then drag. Means I can duplicate a task, an event very easily. With Google, you've got to go into the window. You've got to start. It's just annoying. So I just gave up with it.
Weren't you tempted to try something that Evernote was lagging as far as functionality goes? Basically, the backlinking features. Because they added that, but it was something recent. Weren't you tempted to switch apps because they didn't have the backlinks?
Never needed to use it. I mean, when I started out, I was using paper notebooks. We didn't have backlinks then and they worked fine. I do use backlinks now that they're available in Evernote, but not often. So, my whole system was built around... the way I look at it is my whole system's built around basic fundamental principles. Having backlinks, those kind of things, they're nice, but they're not essential for getting my work done.
So you could basically replicate your system on a paper notepad?
And what I pretty much did with the Franklin Planner experiment I did last year, which was meant to be 3 months, turned into a whole year. And it's still, actually, I don't have it on my desk now, but I still use it on a daily basis to pull out the most important tasks for the day. I like it for its functionality in terms of doing the daily planning. So you've got the task list on the left, you've got the calendar in the middle, and then on the right-hand page, you've got space for making notes. What I love about the Franklin Planner is I'll start my daily planning by writing out my appointments in the calendar section, and I can visually see how much time I realistically have to do tasks. Do writing, recording, whatever. And like today, Thursday, I probably had about 7 or 8 meetings. So, I'm pretty much here in the studio for 8 or 9 hours today. There's not, other than writing the podcast script and planning tomorrow, that's pretty much all I had on my list today. And that's great because it's real. Digital doesn't do that for you. Of course, the calendar does, but the task list, I mean, if I'd put lots of tasks for the 30th of October 2025, they're going to come up whether I like it or not. What I like about that Franklin Planner is I have to handwrite it out. So A, it's slowing me down and it's making me think and be realistic, which digitally, it's not that easy to do.
Yeah, digitally you can pretty much plan your day 3 times over and the app will still accept it. This is also something I have started to do several years ago. I started to copy the events for the day and the tasks for the day to a paper pocket notepad in order to have it on me and to have the page was the day. And so if I didn't have any space on the page, it meant you will not have the time to do the task because the day is full.
Yes. It's that limitation. It's the constraints that it gives you. But I think the most powerful part of that is the visual side of it. Because as you're writing it, you're probably saying to yourself, this isn't going to happen. So you may as well get realistic. Whereas digital tools, it's so easy just to add a random date, which is what most people end up doing because they don't want to forget the task. So they'll add a random date in 2 or 3 days in the future, but they never look at their calendar to see if it's going to be realistic.
With your Franklin Planner, do you use the time sector system or no?
The time sector systems... at the moment, it's essentially digital. So that's where Todoist comes in because that's, if you like, that's the back end of stuff. That's where I can collect stuff because, when I'm out walking the dog, I have to keep an eye on him. Stopping every few minutes to write down by hand an idea, a task or something. There's better ways of doing it. So I use my phone and dictate directly into Todoist. That's fantastic. But then on a daily basis, I can go to Todoist and I can look at my this week folder and say, right, which are the tasks that need to be done today? And then handwrite them into my Franklin Planner. Now, I know I can be accused of, well, that's duplicating. It's true, but the purpose of it isn't really about the duplication. The purpose is to get me realistic. And one of the great things about paper is it can be open on my desk all day and I never lose sight of what's important. What I found before I went back, because my day started with the Franklin Planner back in 1992. Mm-hmm. I'm very familiar with that. What I found with the digital tools is you don't have the window open all day. When I'm writing, I'm in my writing window. It's focused. So I lose track of the task. But when it's in the Franklin Planner, every time I look down, it's like, you still haven't done this very important task.
But don't you feel nagged by the Franklin Planner that you have to do it?
No, because we do have the forward arrow, which means reschedule.
Okay.
If needs be.
Okay, so can you share a little bit more how you use the Franklin Planner? And you showed me also before the recording that you had a pocket planner, a pocket small notebook.
Well, let me explain. The pocket notebook, for those people watching the video of this, you can see it in my little hand. It's whenever I'm out and about in the house or in the car, this will go with me because one of the things I really like to do at the end of the day is I will catch up with my favorite podcast. Now I like to actually watch the YouTube video version of it. So I watch Cal Newport's podcast. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of The Rest is History, The Rest is Classified, these kind of podcasts. I love to watch them because I can sit on the sofa and I'm engaged. And it's also my time then to switch off from my digital tools. Now, I know you're watching a screen, but I'm not looking at my notes app. I'm not looking at my task manager, my calendar, my email or messages. So this is what's next to me, my little pocket notebook. And I will random thoughts, random ideas get thrown in here. And it's a complete mess. You can probably see that there. It's just, it's probably illegible on the screen, but it is a complete mess. Random stuff just gets thrown in here. But every Saturday when I sit down to do my weekly planning, I will go through the previous week's notes to see if there's anything like content ideas that I can then move into my digital system. project ideas I might have collected while sitting on the sofa. But it's a way of just decompressing from like the digital distractions of email, messages, task managers or whatever. And I just love it. It's just a nice way. And again, in the car, my wife is Korean and she operates on Korean time, which is 10 minutes late. I come from the UK, which is 10 minutes early. So I usually have a 15 to 20 minute window where I'm just sat in the car waiting for her. And again, I have written so much in here and I just find it's just, there's something about pen and paper that engages the brain better than digital tools, I find.
Do you migrate those notes to the Franklin Planner or rather to
They
Evernote?
wouldn't go to the Franklin Planner. The Franklin Planner is more a daily planner for me.
Okay.
That sets up my day because it's there, it's on my desk, and I can make, scratch little notes that might be relevant to that day. But I just treat the Franklin Planner as my, if you like, day planner.
You have mentioned in one of your videos that you think that the analog systems, the old school notebooks and notepads are a better tool to plan projects.
Mm-hmm.
But for publishing and for sharing with the world your stuff, it's better to use digital. Can you develop this idea?
So, I mean, there is scientific studies out now, and I think it all started with Tokyo University study in 2014, but there's been a lot more studies since. Thinking on paper engages the creative side of your brain. And if you think about it, when you're forming letters, you are actually drawing. If you think, I mean, I can write and read Korean Hangul, which is their writing system. It's a phonetic alphabet, so it's actually quite easy to learn. My wife, who's learnt Chinese, she can actually do Chinese characters. But when you get into the Chinese characters, that really is art. It's beautiful and it's artistic. But if you think about that, that's what you're doing. You're engaging the creative part of your brain. Now, when you're planning, you want to be creative. But if you take that to a computer and you're typing, that's not engaging your creative brain. That's tap, tap, tapping. It's repetitive. Plus, they have the added problem now where if you make a grammar mistake, you'll get a green line. Or if you make a spelling mistake, you'll get a red line. So what you end up doing is you start editing, which again is not creative. So if you want to plan anything, I always say start on paper. A clean A4 piece of paper, a couple of different colored pens and a highlighter, and you're going to have a lot of fun, but you're also going to end up really engaging your creative brain. And that's what you want at the start of a project. Now, the second step to this is I tend to do this over 2 or 3 days. So the first day is like the big brain dump. The second day, I'll come with a different pen and I'll start adding notes and start connecting things together. And then the third day is just, again, kind of adding more to it. But eventually, I'm then going to scan it into usually Evernote. And that creates the project note. Because ultimately, particularly these days for most people, your project is going to end up in a digital format of some form. So then I can pull out the checklists. If I need to create a checklist, I can start creating, documents and presentation files, whatever, and I can connect those in Notes app. So I click and it'll open up the file. That's where the digital part comes into it. But now I'm into the process of creating something. But that initial thinking, that's where I need my creative brain to be at its best. And as I say, there is now a lot of scientific studies. The one I remember is the Tokyo University study, but there is more. So if anyone's really interested in the science of this, just type in pen versus keyboard scientific studies. There's hundreds of them now, but each one is coming out with the same conclusion, which is if you want to be creative, pick up a pencil or a pen.
Yeah. And also you remember better things if you write by hand.
Well, that was just the initial purpose of the study, was to see how much retention you get from handwriting versus typing. But today we've also now got the styluses, Apple Pencil and those kind of things. So the more recent studies have looked into using that on a screen, and still come up with the same conclusions that, it's still going to be pen and pencil if you want to be properly creative.
There is also an added benefit that a piece of paper is not distracting.
True. And the other thing that there's a wonderful story in
Walter Isaacson,
that's it. Now, in his Leonardo da Vinci biography, I think it's in the introduction, he writes about when he was working with Steve Jobs on his biography. And Steve Jobs told him, he says, "Oh, don't worry, I've got all my journals and notes from when we were developing Next. I will send you everything over." Anyway, 2 or 3 weeks went by, nothing came. So he contacted Steve Jobs and said, "You said you were going to send me these journals." And he says, "Slight problem. I typed them into a computer, and even the best engineers at Apple, we've just not been able to get them into a readable format." Now, the time difference was just 10 years. 10 years when he wrote it to when it was just, they couldn't open it. Leonardo da Vinci's Codex and his notebooks, and we've got several thousands of pages of it, is still available to us today, 500 years after his death. And one of the things that people will say, people are not going to find my life interesting. But there is another story here. There's a gentleman from the 17th century called Samuel Pepys. Now, Samuel Pepys was a low-level civil servant working in London. And he kept a journal for 10 years. And he wrote a diary journal every day for 10 years. He wrote about his life in London for a low-level, so I guess not quite working class, but middle class, married gentleman in London in the 1700s. And we are so lucky to have that journal today, because what we normally hear historically are the events. Who was the king, who was the queen, who was the prime minister. We hear those things, but we don't really know what it was like to be a low-level civil servant living in London. But we do, because Samuel Pepys wrote his journals for 10 years. And we know, and that was actually at some critical times, because I think the plague, so it must have been the 1600s, that was it, because he was there when the plague was going through London. So we were able to hear from somebody who was there what it was like to live at that time. If we commit everything to digital technology today, there's a good chance we will have none of that in the future. So I am so glad there has been in recent years a big move back towards handwriting journals, because that's going to give historians in the future an opportunity to see what life was really like. So you may think your life is like, well, my life is really boring. I think mine is. And yet maybe in 300 years' time, if they find my journals, they'll say, actually, wow, that was their life back then. They were using this thing called Google, which I'm assuming Google won't exist in there.
Yeah, well, this is called digital impermanence. There is a music producer who's called Steve Albini, who produced Nirvana's In Utero. And when they were preparing some kind of a commemorative edition of this album, they had pretty much the same problem that Steve Jobs had with his notes, because they couldn't open some sessions that were recorded on a digital medium, on an ADAT, I suppose. But the master tapes that Steve Albini recorded on an analog reel-to-reel tape machine were still readable, and they did the mix actually from those reel-to-reels. And analog will always be readable, because, you can always open a notebook and read some letters, or in the case of a magnetic tape, you can use the magnetic the magnetic recording that can be translated into current and then listen to. Whereas with digital formats, you have the compatibility issues that can make it unreadable.
Yeah, so that's one of the things why I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure that if somebody read my journals today, they say, what a boring life you have. But I'm hoping in 300-400 years' time, if somebody reads them, they'll think, was that what life was really like in Korea in 2025?
Yeah. Do you think that the popularity of notepads and paper journals is also a consequence of the fact that more and more people of our age are recording content, and so they are sharing their practices. Because I think that people come to paper and to appreciating fountain pens, for example, and appreciating different kinds of paper for writing, for the feel that it offers. It's something that young people don't do. It's usually people after 40 or maybe even later in their lives, because they are starting to think, well, for example, I have children. I would like my daughters to read my notes one day when they will get older. Whereas if you have 20 years, it's not the thing.
Well, Korea is very famous for being a high-tech country, and it is. I mean, after all, it's the home of LG and Samsung. My wife went back to university about 3 years ago. She's doing physical therapy, which is very good for me as I get older. But she's doing this with 20-year-old students. I mean, these kids are straight out of high school. They're into university. They're doing physical therapy. And I was doing my research last year on pen and paper, and I just said, in your classes, as a percentage, how many people are using tablets and laptops? And how many people are using these A4, A5 notebooks? And she said, it's about 40-60. 60% are using digital tools and 40% are using notebooks and pens and pencils. Interestingly, though, if you break that 40% who are using pencils and pens, it's about 70% girls, 30% men.
Interesting.
So girls... Now, another thing that we have a local cheap discount store close by, and the second floor is just full of pencil cases, pens, notebooks, folders. And my wife goes down there sometimes, and I usually go in and have a wander around. And on that second floor, I'm always amazed at how many middle school and high school kids are in there buying pens and pencils and colour and notebooks and stuff. So I have a feeling that it's never going to go away. I think there's going to be a fair percentage of people who will still love that pen and paper. As you say, the feel of a pen or pencil on a paper. I mean, plastic on glass does not work. I've tried it. Even with paper-like. I mean, it gets close, but it's still tap, 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 tap. You don't get that wonderful sound of a pencil on paper, which is just... Or even if you've got a scratchy fountain pen, I have a few, with very, very fine nibs. I still love that sound, though.
Okay, so hopefully some young people will also appreciate that. Can you share a little bit about your favorite fountain pens?
Well, my favorite one is one that I've always been a bit of a Mont Blanc fan, because I guess when I was younger, I could never afford one. And I remember when I graduated from university, my parents bought me a Mont Blanc. It's the smallest fountain pen that they do. Well, not the very smallest, but it's just like regular size. And that was always a pride and joy, because I used it for years and years and years. But I also have a cross fountain pen that I used at high school. I still have it. I used at high school as my exam pen. And I used all my high school exams. I wrote all the papers with that pen. My university papers were all written with that pen. And even my lecture notes I used to take with that pen. I still have it in my drawer. I mean, I love that pen. But when I published my book last year, my wife bought me like the ultimate, in my eyes, the ultimate, which is the Mont Blanc 149. Mm-hmm. And I do love that pen. I write my journal with it every morning. It's just a real joy the nib quality is wow.
What nib size do you have?
I use fine, because I don't have very big handwriting, so fine works best for me.
Okay. And your favorite paper?
It's a Monument Nemesine is my favorite kind of like note-taking paper, if you like. When it comes to journals, that was always been a problem because I'm a fountain pen user. I do like slightly bigger notebooks than A5 for writing my journal. And last year, somebody put me onto a company called Smythson in London.
Yeah.
Now, I would recommend anyone listening, please do not go and look at the price. Just don't look at the price.
You will be shocked, but I think it's worth it.
Well, yeah. Now, my little trick is I know that Smythson will have a sale round about the end of November, early December. The beauty of their Panama notebooks, by the way, is that the paper is very thin. and you get about 370 pages, because I only write one page on my journal a day. So it works out one journal will last a year. So I know that if I wait for the sale at the end of November, early December, I can usually save 40%. And with the journal, I don't care what color. I'll take whatever's in the sales. It's never my favorite color of navy blue. So it's also my little pocket notebook, which I think I've shown. This is also a Smyson. This is much cheaper. This is less than $100, but you can also mind you, I'm saying notebook for less than $100 because you're paying $100 for a notebook. But
it's less than an iPad, you know.
It is less than an iPad, yeah. But the thing about these is you can get these in the sales as well. So you can get them for, if you're lucky, you can usually get them for less than $50 in the end. Again, don't be too picky on color.
A rose color will be just fine.
Yeah. But that one I would say is my favorite paper is the Smyson. But for the everyday, taking notes, my planning book, which I have, and this is actually an interesting one for those of you thinking about going analog. Every year in January, I will start a new A4 notebook, and I call it my planning book. And on the front cover, Nemesis notebooks are black. So I write with I've got a white highlighter that I only use once a year. A white marker pen that I only use once a year. I put the year, so it'll be 2026, and then it's called Planning Book. And I'll start at the first page. And what I've found over the last 2 or 3 years that I've been doing this is one A4 notebook with 96 pages will last me a full year. So if you think about that, I've got my YouTube video plans in there, my weekly planning matrix is in there, and all my project plans are all in there, and we only need one a year. So after 10 years, that's not a great deal of space, but it's 10 years of projects and YouTube videos and weekly plans. What an archive of material I'm going to have. I'm kind of excited. I've already got 3 years worth now.
Have you tried the Midori notebooks?
I do, yeah. I have had a couple of those. I do like them. They just don't do the size that I like, which is I think they call it composition notebook, which is
they
B5.
do an A4.
They do A4, which I always find a bit too small for me. For the work that I use it for, like a scratch pad.
Okay. And do you think that using paper in today's world could be an antidote to all the tools that come out with AI and we have talked about no distractions that a paper notebook offers, but do you think that also it can be a rebellion against AI?
Well, I probably would have thought that a while ago, but if you go onto YouTube and you start searching for notebook videos, this is something I wouldn't recommend. I mean, if you think digital apps are bad, you just look at the number of videos on notebooks and pens. There are millions of them. But I think they've been around for a long time. And I mean, I remember when Moleskine back in 2008, 2009 was like the notebooks to have, because all the designers and creative people were walking around with these Moleskine notebooks. You would have thought back then that, this is just a trend. But it's persisted. It's still there. And it's, if anything, I haven't looked at the recent data on this, but notebook sales and pen sales are still going very, very strong. So I have a feeling that people eventually come to realize that if their lives is spent in front of a computer at work, they come home at night, they watch Netflix all night, intermittently while messaging people on the phone, it's like screens are just dominating your life. And I think in many ways, that's one of the reasons why I started to go back to paper, is because I thought I just need a break from screens. And it's just lovely to go to the dining room with an A4 notebook, a couple of pens and a highlighter and a cup of tea, and just plan the next project or the next video or whatever. And I just love not having a screen in front of me for an hour, 90 minutes or whatever. It's peaceful. I think that would be the way I'd describe it.
Peaceful productivity.
Now that could be a good one for a new book.
Don't you think that somehow there are smartphones and also small tablets that are based on e-ink recently, e-ink or e-paper, that e-ink, are trying to basically be an antidote to planning on an iPad or in front of a color screen, but rather to offer the black and white and maybe not analog, but a passive screen that reflects light and
well, I've seen that
shining.
Even Mont Blanc is doing this now as well. And I thought, oh, wow, but you need about $1,000 to buy one. Ooh. Mont Blanc are doing these e-ink tablets too. The thing is it's a bit like self-driving cars. We keep hearing about self-driving cars and how everyone said, oh, this is going to be the future. I honestly don't think so, because the people who drive cars largely enjoy driving. So why would you want to take that pleasure away from them? And secondly, we already have self-driving cars. We've got taxis. So why would I want to spend money on a car that I can't drive when I can already get a taxi that I don't need to drive? So I'm not sure what problem they're trying to solve with self-driving cars, because if you look at the legal definition of being in, drink driving, for example, somebody once said to me, well, you can go out to the pub with your mates and get the car to drive you home. Well, actually, no, because the way the law is described is you are in control of, you're in charge of a car. So who is in charge of this car is usually, at the moment, is the driver. If you have a self-driving car, you're still in control of the car. So therefore, it's still, you wouldn't be able to do it. But you've still got taxis. So why are we trying to solve that problem? I mean, I don't understand the problem they're trying to solve. It's the same with these e-ink tablets. I'm not really sure what problem they're trying to solve, because if I want to digitize a paper note, it's very easy just to use the scanner in my phone and put it into my digital notes. And you can annotate those notes digitally then as well. So again, this is why there's some inventions where you think initially, oh, that's a good idea. And then you start to think about it and think, well, hang on, what problem are they actually trying to solve here? So I'm not sure the e-ink tablets will be big. I'm sure they'll sell a few, but I'm not sure they're going to be a big seller. I
think the problem that self-driving cars are trying to solve is the problem of the person who is driving the car.
That's what makes driving so much fun, particularly in Korea, because, I mean, there are some Korean drivers, their attitude seems to be, I'm in control of the road, you have to stop, even when I shouldn't really have to stop. But I find that's the exciting part of driving. Anyway.
So, which car are you driving, Carl?
I have a Range Rover. I'm a huge Range Rover fan. I love my Range Rovers.
With manual transmission? With a gearbox, manual gearbox? Or automatic?
No, sadly, they don't sell manual gearboxes anymore. I have to use automatic. I learned to drive with stick, and I do like stick. And it's one of the things I like about when I visit Ireland to see my family. We usually rent a car from the airport, and they say, would you like auto? I said, no, thank you. Give me a stick, please.
If a client of yours contacted you and asked you what would be the best first step to go from digital productivity to analog productivity to using some kind of a notebook, what would you suggest?
Well, one of the things I often suggest, particularly to my clients who are just overwhelmed with stuff, is I have this over here. This is I don't need this now because I use a Franklin Planner. Again, for those people, if they're watching this, they can see this. This is an A7 Maruman Nemesine notebook, and it's a flip notebook, so you can just flip it over like this. What I always tell people is, if you want to go in some way analog, is write the date at the top of the page, because it's only A7, it's very small, and then write down the 2 or 3 things that you must do that day. Now, the great thing about these is they sit nicely on the desk, they don't take up any space, and these will be in your eyesight all day. And if you think the dopamine hit of checking off a task on a digital task manager is good, wait till you start crossing tasks off on here. The dopamine hit is 10 times better. But the thing is, it's so nice to get to the end of the day and you've crossed all 2 or 3 things off. And these are just the most important things that you must do that day. I limited it when I was doing this experiment. I limited it to 3 per day, no more than 3. And what a joy it was. Doing that. And that's actually what got me that was the idea that I said, hang on a minute, I used to do this with the Franklin Planner. Let's go back to the Franklin Planner as part of my experiment this year. That's what I did last year, and see what it's like in the real world today. And I was just amazed at how much more focused I felt each day just by planning the day on paper. It was incredible, the change in the focus that I had, because I never lost sight of what was important that day.
So you started by planning your day actually, or you started by planning your projects and making...
Well, planning the projects, I think I'd kind of been hybrid for a while. I mean, I don't remember when I started. I think this goes back to probably about 2007, 2008. I mean, I always used to start creating lesson plans and presentation and workshops on paper first. And I don't think I ever really stopped, even though there were digital tools like mind mapping tools, which I tried in the past and stuff like that. I did try them, but I never really felt totally comfortable with those. I always tended to go back to paper to brainstorm the initial ideas. So I don't think I've ever stopped that. I just got more organized with it 2 or 3 years ago with the A4 planning book.
Because for me, the start was also a small A6 notebook, a pocket notebook, in order not to be overwhelmed by the tasks I have to do each day. But later on, it evolved to using bigger and bigger notebooks for planning, for journaling, and for other stuff. So when do you think people should consider probably upgrading from the small Mnemosine A7 wire-bound notebook to something bigger?
I mean, it's entirely up to the individual. You tend to start to realize how much more focused you are once you start with just a small piece of, notebook. Another one that I would recommend to people is just have an A5 little notebook next to you on your desk, because it's a pen or pencil. I always have a pencil because you don't have to click anything. It's just, you can write straight away. It's surprising how quickly, and you'll just write something down. Now, the other thing about this is if you're in a meeting, whether it's digital or in person, nobody ever gets offended because you've written something down on a notebook. But quite a lot of people get offended because you picked up your phone or you start typing on an iPad. They're replying to emails, they're replying to messages. Nobody ever thinks that when you write something down in a notebook. So another thing about pen and paper is that you're never going to offend anybody.
Yes, because a smartphone is a tool that can serve 100 purposes. It can be for scrolling Instagram, it can be also for replying to emails, etc. Whereas a notebook is just something for making notes. When you shared with us your tech stack, you didn't mention any project management software. Does it mean that you don't use any because you don't have the need, or you use Todoist for that, for cooperating with people, for example?
With project management, I always have a project note in Evernote. So Evernote is really my project manager.
Okay.
I can share that with my team if I need to.
Mm-hmm.
And, writing the book, that when you have a publisher involved, is a big task. It took 3 years to do. Weirdly, the first draft took 3 months. The rest of it was editing, and it's a long process, and there was a lot of notes. And it's interesting to go back into that project note that I have in Evernote for that project.
But you wrote the book in Evernote?
Oh, no. I use something called Scrivener for writing books.
Okay.
But, meetings with the publisher, meeting with the publisher's marketing team and that sort of thing, I had to keep all that in. I kept it all in Evernote. But also like checklists and next actions. So when I had a meeting with the publisher, he'd say, right, can you do this? Can you do that? Because in the meeting, I'd be writing them down. So they get typed directly into Evernote. So they form the next task. So in Todoist, all I would have is, it was on my calendar. It's like, continue writing book. That was a task I saw there for 2 years. Every day, 5 days a week, continue writing book. It was nice to be able to delete that task eventually in the end when it got published. So the project software I use my notes for that. And I suppose, again, that comes back to, I grew up, my first jobs were in hotel management. So, we had to plan weddings, banquets, meetings, large conferences. It was all done on paper. We didn't need to have sophisticated project management tools. And I'm thinking, if you can organize a wedding for 150 people using just pen and paper, I don't really need a sophisticated, expensive project management tool.
Yeah. Could you share which other analog things are you using in your life? maybe you went back to listening to vinyl or something like that?
I haven't, but my wife and I keep talking about that. It would be nice, but I mean, I love music, and there are certain albums that I would love to get on vinyl, you know, like Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits, which is it was always one of my favourite albums. Queen's Greatest Hits 1, another just classic.
Classics.
And Born in the USA, I think is the Bruce Springsteen one. You know, those kind of, it would just be so good to have those on. Oh, and Madonna's Like a Virgin, because that was one of my first CDs, if I remember, that I bought. But it would be so nice to have that on vinyl. So it is a temptation, but we haven't done anything with that anytime soon. But interesting you mentioned that, because the other day I thought, you know, I want to start an anti-convenience movement, because all this technology, it's all about convenience. And there's a lot of things going on in the world today that is probably attributed to the fact that we just have this obsession with trying to find more and more convenient ways of doing things. So, you know, the spectacular rise in obesity, diabetes, type 2 diabetes and that sort of thing. Yeah. I mean, that's down to diet. But when you look at the diets that people are eating, it's all done because of convenience. It's hard to boil potatoes, roast a joint, boil vegetables. It's hard to do that when you can go and buy or just order something online and it'll be there out your door, cooked and ready to eat in 30 minutes. Of course, I can see the attraction of that. But long term, it's killing you. So it's probably not a good idea. And I have a feeling that we're in a position now where smoking was in 1950. Yeah, we know it's bad for us, but hey, it's not that bad for us. But gradually over time, people began to realize that actually it's killing you. And I have a feeling that we're pretty much at that same stage where smoking was, or people's attitude to smoking was in the 1950s. And I was thinking, I really should start an anti-convenience movement. Because one of the other things...
I'm joining it.
Yeah, I was just thinking the other day, well, back in July, my wife bought me an ironing board for my birthday. And it's just brilliant. We don't have a lot of ironing to do, but I have about, 30 minutes a week where I can set up the ironing board, put some music on, and for 30 minutes, no screens. It's just me, the iron, steam iron, and clothes. And I'm even ironing my wife's clothes for her. I love it. But I just thought, I mean, I could just quite easily just send it to the laundry and go and collect it the next day, and it's done. It's all ironed and ready for me. But what's the fun in that? It's a lot more fun ironing my own clothes and learning how to iron properly. So I just thought, there's some things I'm thinking that perhaps the technology, while it's fantastic, it's amazing, it's wonderful what it can do, it's almost magical, but is it really good for us? And that was the thought I was having. Is it really good for us? And, you know, I was thinking, perhaps not.
Well, vinyl made a comeback several years ago. Magnetic cassettes, the small cassettes are making a comeback.
I've heard them coming back too.
Young people are using analog cameras with film
I've heard
inside.
That.
So I think the anti-convenience movement could be very strong.
I think it could be. But as I say, I have a feeling that what you alluded to a little while ago is that there is likely to be a sense that people have had enough of this technology going so far forward because it's taking the joy out of life.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that you find with like social media, for example. And although I confess I will watch like episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if it's presented in front of me. Mm-hmm. But there was also a joy of, and I remember I think it was probably Miami Vice or something like that when I was growing up, you had to wait a week between episodes. And actually, I remember in the late 1990s with Ally McBeal, that was on in the UK, Channel 4.
I was watching it also.
Channel 4, 9 p.m. And I used to remember on a Sunday night, that was my joy. I used to sit down and watch, it's Ally McBeal tonight. And I would sit down at 9 o'clock and watch it. I had to be in a certain place at a certain time. It wasn't, I'm going to carry on scrolling social media. I can catch that up on streaming later. Yeah, it's great. I mean, that's superbly convenient, but there was a joy of that excitement of looking forward to 9 p.m. on a Sunday night. So I think eventually there'll be a balance. The balance will be recreated because humans are very good at that. We go too far and then we pull back a little bit. And I think we're at the start of that where people are pulling back. I think Apple probably made a mistake hyping their AI that wasn't really AI last year. Yeah. It built up expectations, which then people got rather disappointed with. I don't think it's hurt their business, but I think it's probably speeded up that sense that perhaps technology is going a little bit, doing too much for us.
Could you please share where people can find you online and what are you up to in the coming months?
Well, we're now in the what I call my annual planning season. So October and November is when I go through a few questions like, what would I like to change about myself? What would I like to change about the way I work?
Will you share it online?
Well, it's already online. It's on my download center. Okay. So if you go to my website, you can get the 5 questions. Mm-hmm. And for 2 months, I just basically, again, this is in my planning book, at the back of the planning book, and every year I write these out. And it's just at the moment I'm in the brainstorming stage. I could probably collect 20 to 30 ideas on that page answering these questions. I might only do 2 or 3 next year. But because I keep them from the previous years, it's interesting to see where I was and where I am now in that continuous development stage. So that's where I'm at the moment in terms of, if you like, a project that I'm working on. But if people want to learn more about what I'm doing, you can catch it on my website, carlpullein.com. You can get all the links to YouTube videos, podcasts, blogs, and so on. Is all there.
Thank you very much, Carl.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.